Welcome to our training on compressed gas cylinder safety. Industrial and laboratory operations require compressed gases for a variety of uses and applications. As someone who works with compressed gas cylinders, you shoulder the responsibility to safely manage and use them. In addition to their practical applications, compressed gas cylinders also pose a unique hazard. Depending on the particular gas, there is potential for simultaneous exposure to both physical or mechanical hazards, as well as chemical hazards. Fortunately, you can minimize, if not completely eliminate, hazards presented by compressed gas cylinders. Continue in the course to learn more. First, take a look at the physical hazards associated with compressed gas cylinders. Since the gases are contained in heavy, highly pressurized containers, the large amount of potential energy resulting from compression of the gas makes the cylinder a potential projectile or fragmentation bomb powerful enough to blast through concrete block walls. There have been many incidents in which a leaking cylinder has turned into a virtual torpedo, bursting through walls, knocking down scaffolds, and even flying into nearby traffic. Other worse incidents have occurred when a leaking cylinder exploded. These are just some of the physical hazards that you can help prevent with careful handling and use. Severe cuts, bruises, and burns, broken bones and loss of limbs, or spinal cord injuries. As well as the many physical hazards just mentioned, it's also important to be aware of the chemical risks involved in working with compressed gas cylinders. Chances of reactivity due to incompatible gases and toxicity or poisoning can be a threat. A leaking cylinder may also cause asphyxiation, which is oxygen deprivation. Incidents of asphyxiation may be caused simply by high concentrations of so-called harmless gases, such as nitrogen. It's crucial to be aware of these potential physical and chemical hazards, as any of them may result in injury or death. That's why it's so important for you to not only know how to safely handle compressed gas cylinders in your workplace, but to use that knowledge as well. After completing this training, you will be able to identify common and unique hazards while working with compressed gas cylinders. Follow proper identification requirements, including labeling and color coding. Describe storage techniques of compressed gas cylinders, such as segregation, securing, and signage. And recall proper handling, transportation, and use of compressed gas cylinders. Let's get started by looking at the identification of compressed gas cylinders. Before beginning any work with compressed gas, always identify the contents of the cylinder. Identification on a cylinder may indicate safe storage, handling, transportation, or use of the gas. Before handling any compressed gas cylinder, read the label. All compressed gas cylinders should be legibly marked with either the chemical or trade name of the gas. This marking must be a stencil, stamp, or label, or a combination of any of these. Whenever practical, the marking should be located on the shoulder of the cylinder. However, never rely on the cylinder's color. Colors may vary depending on the supplier. If in doubt as to the identity of the contents of a cylinder, don't use it. Although cylinder color is not a reliable indicator of contents, the color of the label is critical. Pay close attention to these colors. The label color can be used to indicate hazardous properties, such as flammability, toxicity, or the presence of corrosive substances. Moreover, do not rely on valve cap color. That's because valve caps are interchangeable. The valve cap on a given cylinder may not actually belong on that cylinder. Since it's so important to accurately identify the contents of a compressed gas cylinder, take a moment to practice what you've learned so far. Read the question and then select the best answer. What's the best way to identify the contents of a compressed gas cylinder? You should examine the cylinder color, cylinder label, valve cap label, or cylinder height. When storing cylinders inside a building, always store them in the right environment to avoid hazards. Store cylinders in a well-protected, well-ventilated, and dry environment. Be certain the area is free of flame, sparks, or electrical current. It should be level and designed for gas cylinder storage. That means store cylinders in assigned places away from elevators, stairs, or gangways. Also, never allow the temperature to rise above 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Cylinders may be stored where exposed to sunlight, but remember, paved surfaces absorb and emit heat energy, making some sunny areas less than ideal for cylinder storage. This may not sound important, but in a recent accident, exposure to sunlight caused a propylene cylinder's valve to overheat. The valve expanded and began to leak. Then the cylinder exploded. The energy of the fire and explosion was so great that it caused appliances to melt in a nearby appliance store. Imagine the potential energy required to melt your refrigerator. This is why proper cylinder storage is essential in preventing injury. Some gas suppliers recommend that a particular gas be stored in the shade to keep cylinders from overheating. It's also important to keep cylinders away from extremely low temperatures, as metal contracts when cold, which could lead to cylinder failure. Now that you've learned to identify cylinder contents, you must use that knowledge to segregate cylinders by hazardous gas. Store incompatible gases by hazard class in separate areas. Although it may seem insignificant, segregate empty cylinders as well. Since you should never empty a cylinder below 25 pounds per square inch, even used cylinders contain enough gas to cause an explosion. Always keep cylinders upright and at least 20 feet from highly combustible materials. If your facility uses oxygen cylinders, never store them full or empty near flammable gases. In fact, maintain a minimum of 20 feet between flammable gas cylinders and oxygen cylinders, or use a 5-foot-high firewall with a fire resistance rating of at least a half hour to separate the storage areas. Also, never place greasy or oily materials near oxygen. Be careful. If a cylinder falls or the valve is damaged, the cylinder can become an uncontrolled projectile. Avoid this hazard by securing the cylinder at all times to a wall, holding cage, heavy workbench or lab bench, or no-tip base. Once you have a solid support in place, fasten restraints on the upper half of the cylinder above the center of gravity using chains, sturdy straps or cylinder straps, cables, clamps, or a floor stand cylinder support. For added security when vibration or accidental contact are a concern, a 2-point restraint system may be used. For the safety of all employees, clearly post signs in areas where flammable compressed gases are stored, identifying the substances and appropriate precautions. For example, hydrogen, flammable gas, no smoking, or no open flames. How confident do you feel about your ability to properly store compressed gas cylinders? Read the question and select the best answer. Which of the following is an example of safe compressed gas cylinder storage? Sunlight and ambient temperatures do not allow the cylinder temperature to exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Empty oxygen cylinders are stored with flammable gases. Cylinders are stored outside in cold, icy weather. Or an acetylene cylinder is unsecured but leans against a wall so it doesn't fall over. It's important to know that some gases have very specific procedures for safe handling and use. Before handling any compressed gas cylinder, locate the Safety Data Sheet, or SDS, for the gas you're using. This document contains vital information that you need to keep in mind for handling each gas. Many accidents occur while moving or transporting cylinders. Handle cylinders gently. They may look strong and solid, but if a cylinder is damaged, it can become an uncontrollable hazard. To begin, follow these simple guidelines when transporting cylinders. First, remove the regulator. Never move a cylinder with the regulator still in place. This is important. If a cylinder falls, the regulator could easily snap off, turning the cylinder into a missile. Once the regulator is removed, replace the valve cap. Never lift any cylinder by the valve or protective cap. Last, secure the cylinder to a suitable hand truck or cart in an upright position. Never roll a cylinder on its side. It is only safe to roll a cylinder on its edge when you do not have to roll it great lengths. Never roll it for a long time. To prevent the accidental release of compressed gases, take all precautions to avoid dropping, knocking over, dragging, or sliding cylinders, as well as striking cylinders against each other. This means that it's imperative that all cylinders be stabilized during transportation. You should only move or handle one cylinder at a time. Do you feel you can now effectively handle and transport compressed gas cylinders? Try this learning activity before applying those procedures on the job. Drag these safe transportation procedures into the correct order. When working with compressed gas cylinders, the clothes and equipment you wear can save your life. Always follow safety guidelines for personal protective equipment, or PPE. Wear safety glasses, preferably with a face shield, when handling and using compressed gases, especially when connecting and disconnecting compressed gas regulators and lines. Also, if working with a hazardous gas, use gloves or any other PPE recommended for that gas. Which of the following is appropriate when moving a cylinder? Roll it on its side. Lift it by the valve. Secure it upright in a suitable hand truck or cart, or keep the regulator in place. Now that you've become familiar with personal protective equipment, let's learn about valve safety. Valve safety is one of the most important steps in preventing compressed gas cylinder hazards. Most cylinders either come with a valve cap or built-in valve protection. Valve caps must be on all cylinders at all times, except when the cylinder is in use or connected for use. Standard cylinder valve outlet connections have been devised by the Compressed Gas Association, CGA, to prevent mixing of incompatible gases. For example, valve outlet threads may vary in diameter, internal or external orientation, or right-handed or left-handed threads. Right-handed threads are used for non-fuel and water-pumped gases, while left-handed threads are used for fuel and oil-pumped gases. You can minimize hazards by only using CGA standard combinations of valves and fittings in compressed gas installations. And to prevent leaks, avoid the assembly of miscellaneous parts. When handling valves, remember the following points. Make sure a cylinder's valve is accessible whenever you're working with it, so that you can quickly close it if needed. Never leave the main cylinder valve open when the equipment is unattended or not operating. This not only prevents possible injuries, but also corrosion of the valve and air contamination. When opening and closing valves, only use tools provided by the cylinder supplier. Never use pliers to open a cylinder valve. Some valves may require washers. You should check this before the regulator is fitted to prevent leaks and injuries. True or false? It's okay to use pliers to open a cylinder valve if the supplier did not provide any tools. It may seem like a simple situation of on and off, but rushing through the regulator procedure may cause pressure leaks, potentially resulting in severe injuries. By following these simple regulator rules, you can avoid hazards. To begin, attach the regulator to the cylinder valve outlet. Then, turn the delivery pressure adjustment knob counterclockwise until it turns freely. You should make sure the flow control valve is in the closed position. Slowly open the cylinder valve until the regulator registers the cylinder pressure. Next, turn the delivery pressure adjustment knob clockwise until the desired deliver pressure is reached. And remember, regulators are gas-specific and not necessarily interchangeable. For example, if copper tubing is used with acetylene, it produces an explosive copper acetylide. Finally, always make sure that the regulator and valve fittings are compatible. It's important to regularly inspect compressed gas cylinders. Taking a few extra minutes to inspect your equipment could save you and your coworkers from serious consequences. Check for the following. Are there signs of defects? Is there any deep rusting? Does it contain the correct gas in the designated usage area? Check all hoses and other equipment. Apply soapy water to check all connections for leaks. If bubbles form on the hoses or connections, then you have a leak. Never use an open flame to detect leaks. What should you do if you discover a leaking cylinder? First, move it to a safe place if it is safe to do so. And inform your supervisor. Do not attempt to repair the cylinder yourself. Repairs should be made by qualified personnel only. Again, under no circumstances should you ever attempt to repair a leaking cylinder or valve. You will only endanger your life and the lives of others. It's not worth the risk for you to try to repair a cylinder on your own. It's time for another knowledge check. Read the questions and select the best answers. True or false? Regulators are always interchangeable. who should make minor repairs to a leaking cylinder or valve? You, your supervisor, the fire department, or qualified personnel? Congratulations on completing this course. Hopefully you feel more confident and prepared when it comes to working with compressed gas cylinders. Now that you have completed the training, you should be able to identify common and unique hazards while working with compressed gas cylinders. Follow proper identification requirements, including labeling and color coding. Describe storage techniques of compressed gas cylinders, such as segregation, securing, and signage. And recall proper handling, transportation, and use of compressed gas cylinders. This concludes the compressed gas cylinder safety course.